Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. 5 minutes past. I think we can start the webinar now. Thank you to all of you who have taken time out of your busy schedule to join us in this evening webinar. And it's our first webinar for RBC in 2024. In today's discussion, we are very happy to have two guest speakers who will be able to give a thorough summary and forecast on the UK mortgage market outlook and also UK taxation regime. My name is Shelvin. I'm from RBC. We are a marketing consultancy company based in KL, and I have over 16 years of experience dealing with international buyers in various global markets, such as the UK, Australia, and Singapore and Japan. Today, I'm joined by Sam Lee from Capricorn Financial, who specializes in new build and mortgages for non-UK residents. Sam has over 14 years of experience in UK mortgage. He heads up Capricorn International team and he's now stationed in Singapore. We also have a tax expert, Richard, from Adams & Moore. Richard is a qualified UK accountant with over 15 years experience working in UK tax. He's responsible for helping corporate clients run their businesses in the most tax efficient way. And he also helps individuals to manage their personal finances. So Richard will be adding depth to our discussion as far as to the possible exemptions as for an overseas investor could get. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Tonight, I'll cover the UK market in 2023 in terms of performance. I will also share the predictions for the Year of Dragon, not the feng shui, but it's the market performance as well. Sam will then discuss the landscape back in 2023 as far as financial market is concerned. And despite some challenges, I'm sure all of you know that we have an enormous turbulent year last year. We saw positive trends with 3 months of rate pauses and better mortgage option as well. So looking ahead to 2024, we will explore what's in store for interest rates. So Richard, our tax guy, he would then break down taxes for non-UK residents holding properties in the UK and share tips for tax efficiency. So let's jump right in. Before we share our professional opinions and predictions, let's recap how the market performed in 2023. Here's a quick snapshot of the state of UK economy and the property market as we enter 2024. So far, it's not looking too bad. I think the trading updates so far are mixed bag, but there are certainly no signs of high street apocalypses. And the supermarket actually had a good run, had a very good Christmas. If you just jump on Google and research on GDP that generated just back in Christmas period, it was a phenomenal number. So all of the above, we've seen the average UK price from Halifax reported a 1.7% growth in 2023. And there is another report from Zoopla. It's a mixed report, by the way, and I think it's fair for us to show to everybody as well. They reported a decline of 1.1%. But again, it's not a double-digit decline. So I think that's a really good news. The OPR paused since September last year. And from there, we did see a slight pick up in the market since then. So the price rose for the third month in a row. 15% more sales agreed versus back in 2022. Then that's reported by Zoopla. And the rents, the average rents in the UK in general have increased by 9.7%, phenomenal year on year. So all the above happened against a backdrop of an undersupply market. And some of you may know the UK government would have an annual dwelling completion target. So based on the stats issued by Land Registry Office, we are still quite well below the 300,000 units annual target. I will share more in-depth insights in the next few slides. So ladies and gentlemen, let's brace for stats and figure, and I will try not to make it as a mathematics class. There's a lot of numbers. Price movement in the UK. Let's start from the overall national performance. In 2023, house prices in the UK experienced 1.7%, as what I mentioned. And that results in average property price now being £4,800 more expensive than in December 2022. And this resilience can be attributed more to the scarcity of available properties for sale rather than the strength of buyers' demand. It is also worth noting that this growth is a notable achievement because it defied all earlier expert predictions of potential declines ranging from the region of 5% to 12%. I think we've seen all of the scary reports back then in late 2022. So well done, United Kingdom. Focusing on the capital, London, the average home experienced a decline of just over £12,000 loss in value. And that's approximately 2.3% decline. And that attributed to higher borrowing costs, which affects the buyer's demand. 2.3% price drop, is it worrying? Definitely not at all. It still stands significantly less than earlier projections of a double-digit decline made by lots of economics in the market during the period when there was a surging mortgage prices reaching 15 years high. Shifting our focus to the second most invested city globally in the UK, Manchester. The property prices have demonstrated a consistent growth, but thanks to all new regeneration programs and the introductions of new amenities, train stations, bus stations, schools, new commercial areas, and the rapidly increasing demand, which is fueled by strong migration. And you may be wondering, who are the people flocking into Manchester? And they're predominantly consisting of young professionals and students coming now, not just around the world, but also there's a strong number coming from inside of England, interstate migration. And especially in city center, currently experiencing a significant boom. The city population now has expanded by 9.7% growth, and the employment has surged by 28%. So it actually places a heightened pressures on the housing market because of the undersupply issue. Now back in UK general, but now focusing more on the rental. So on average basis, the UK rents have risen 9.7% last year, compared to 11.9% the year before in 2022. Now, in context, the average cost of a new let has gone up by 31% over the last 3 years. And this is equivalent of £3,360 a year. This incredible double-digit heights for new lets is highly due to the imbalance between available rental stock and tenants' demand. The higher mortgage rate since autumn 2022 has made home ownership more expensive, that's for sure. But there was also record levels of immigrations and particularly high numbers of overseas students deciding to pursue their higher educations in the UK for the obvious reasons. Now, for the focus into the city, the rental growth has slowed the most in London, unfortunately, but sensible decline. They are still making around 9% growth. If you compare with 2022, they had 17, but 23 they have 9% growth. We also observed that most of the rent reductions were from London market. So currently, the average rent in London stands at £2,127 per month. That's the average. I think we can all conclude that the rental market has passed the peak pain because the rates pretty much reached the affordable ceiling in October. If you just have to look at the graph, so we are hitting the peak around here, and then it is in. And then obviously the marginal decline in rents in November aligns with typical seasonal trends. Meanwhile, in Manchester, we have a record-breaking 19.6% rental growth. So I'm going to put the focus on Manchester now. This is a big six city index released by JLL. And then you can see that Manchester experiencing the highest annual growth at 19.6% over the last 12 months. There have been several new schemes completed in Manchester. So the improvement in the quality of this scheme alongside with high demand from prospective tenants has all attributed to the increase in rents. And that results in higher rental growth than what we've seen across all other cities. So what actually happened in 2023 that spurred the rental demand? Number one, increased university graduate retention rate, which is sitting at 51%, one of the highest in the country. Secondly, there's a massive job opening in this multi-stream economy. So we've got job opportunity coming from fintech, life science, advanced engineering, and big fashion houses. And I'm sure all of you have read the deadline. The French luxury label Chanel, they took their annual runway show in Manchester just last year, completely star-studded. And that is phenomenal. And then almost 70% of the employment in the city center region is in the knowledge-intensive industry. So it makes it incredibly accessible for young professionals looking for opportunity. However, there is a serious housing shortage issue to accommodate an additional 7,000 people per annum who work in the city center. So just in February last year itself, we saw the lowest number of apartment listing available since 2019. They were sitting at around 528 units available for stock. And you know, just compare this with 2 years before, back in February 2021, the rental stock were available back then was 2,200. So 500 versus 2,200 is a far cry. So that indicates that the tenants in Manchester are more reluctant to move now because of the fierce competition and fierce competitions in the market. So summary. So after delving into the numbers and stats, it's also crucial to reflect on the overall health of the market. So our assessment yields a resounding affirmation. Yes, the market is indeed robust, but why? Firstly, the strength of the labor market is really evident with substantial employment growth and higher earnings. The pay growth right now is 8%, which means the average wages are 26% higher than 5 years ago. So while the rising wages provide some cushion against the increased rents and also mortgage repayment, I'm fairly saying that they also pose a challenge to the Bank of England, the 2% inflation target. Moreover, the stability of the financial market is underscored by the fact that more homes are owned outright than with mortgage, and the percentage is 35% versus 29%. And that indicates that there are more equity, higher equity being placed in the property, and which is why the main factor of we have not seen any forced sales in the market. The forced sales means lelong in Malaysian context. So the absence of forced selling is also due to the tighter mortgage stress testing rules since the GFC in 2008. And also why forced selling is not happening, because many are protected by the fixed rate deals. And those who are not could still enjoy a 12-month grace period to refinance or switch to an interest-only loan. Next, cash is king, and it holds true. So data from Zoopla reveals that nearly a third, which is about 32% of purchases in 2023, made cash transactions. So with cash buyer actively involved, the transaction volume has been holding quite well in that sense last year. So despite expectation of lesser first-time buyers because of the end of Help to Buy scheme, and definitely because of higher mortgage costs, property prices for homes purchased by first-time buyers actually recorded a slight growth of 0.5% higher over the last year. And that's according to Bank of England. And in terms of mortgage, more than a quarter of total lending in Q3 last year went to first-time buyers. So that marks the highest since the series began in 2007. Lastly, the market benefits from record-breaking immigration, particularly a substantial influx of overseas students, and altogether, not just a student, but working class people, people from all walks of life. There were about 700,000 people in addition. So this demographic diversity contributes positively to the market dynamics. So what's in store for us in 2024? Let's look at the macro. It's crucial to take a glance at the macro environment first. So the Oxford Economic forecast that the inflation is on track to go down to 2% target by late 2024 or early 2025. So with that, we will see improved buyer sentiment, also from the interest rate pause. And then we anticipate that the positive sales momentum from late last year will continue to go into early 2024, and with a seasonal rebound in demand. Despite ongoing challenges for households, we do see that the optimism is increasing as pay growth outpaces inflation. So with that adjustment happening in the market, we will see a more balanced market. And interest rates are expected to come down later this year, which will bring much relief for people taking out a mortgage or remortgage. So the buyer sentiment will definitely improve. And therefore, we shall expect to see a significant rebound in demand from both local and international buyers. We'd expect also areas with strong rental growth in 2023, like Manchester City Centre, or Zone 3 or beyond in London, to experience a great house price growth this year. And it's also fair for me to share the predictions released by big organizations. Let's take a look. We have Knight Frank, Halifax, Nationwide, JLL, Saville, Zubla, all reported either flat or decline, a small decline. But bear in mind, these are also the organizations that were very wrong last year. So will the rental market hit a plateau this year? I will show you a survey results. There was a survey done among buy-to-let and portfolio investors by TML. So 74% of the residential buy-to-let landlords feel confident about the performance of the property market over the next 12 months. And with 27% feeling very confident. So my answer for you is, no, we will not hit a plateau this year. Experts say that rent for new lets are likely to keep rising, but at a slower pace, which has recently been the case. We shall expect a more balanced market, as I mentioned from the earlier slide, because with lesser uncertainty in the market. So things will settle down. It has forecast also that annual rental growth will slow to 5% by the end of next year. So from 2025 onwards, we expect more attractive mortgage options and package, which will result in an increase in tenants moving into owner occupation, which means they are becoming home buyers. And that will bring more balance between tenant market, tenant demand, and also rental stock. So OPR, the base lending rate. In view of inflation rate, we shall expect to see OPR falling to 4.5%. Some expected maybe down to 3.7 by end of 2024. I don't think we will go back to where we were, say it's 0.5. But when people ask, when will be the first reduction, we think that it may happen after May or after June. I'm really hoping to see the base rate stabilizing around 4 to 4.5%. And this will be a great achievement for investors. And of course, I would like to address the housing shortage. And you may ask, wait, housing shortage again? Why is this happening? Unfortunately, it is not an issue that the UK government can resolve overnight. According to Big Research House, over the next 5 years, the rate of undersupply will worsen furthermore, with cumulative or shortfall of 720,000 homes between 2023 to 2028. But why is it so hard to resolve the shortage problem? There are a few fundamental barriers that causes the undersupply issue. First, the construction costs already increased 25%, has hindered a lot of builders to continue building. And secondly, cash flow, money. Bear in mind that developers can only access to deposit and completion money after legal handover. So actually not many developers have the financial capacity to cash flow the entire construction period. And thirdly, the scarcity of land supply. With all that population growth in urban areas, finding a sufficient land for this continued city growth is actually extremely difficult due to planning and viability constraints. And not to mention how the local developers needing to compete with international developers who might have deeper pockets to acquire lands in an already expensive address. So key takeaways. Now that we have the master landscape of the economic and property market, let's talk about timing. Do we go in now or we wait for the next positive headlines? So we got right moment to enter with the perfect product and making an exit just at the sweet spot. So it's a magical equation for winning investment strategy, but how do we put up this timing magic? My business partner, Jasmine, and myself have been riding the market roller coaster since GFC back then, 2008, 2009. So talk about a wild ride. We have practically seen it all. And now if I were to distill our experience into a very quick and punchy summary, I will say that the UK market is just like a sprinter on the mark, very reactive. So once it takes off, it takes off. So picture this. We're drowning in media headlines. Everyone is cheering about the drop in OPR, the interest rate. And then the market sentiment is through the roof. Well, that's exactly when we start feeling overwhelmed, because guess what? By the time all the celebration is in full swing, and then when we are contemplating jumping into the market, it's often the case of too late, because the train has left the station and we are left waving from the platform. So the timing is now, because we are in a buyer's market where there are more good products and options available. And developers are also more motivated to sell or more room for further negotiations. What about the right products? We think that the areas with high population growth and supported by knowledge-intensified job markets such as Manchester City will be the right product. So the recent prediction for economic growth across the UK suggests that Manchester will be the third fastest growing economy across the entire country. And this will be the result of increased investment or ample redevelopment. And there's a lot of job opportunity across the city, not just in the city, but also beyond Greater Manchester. The rental market experienced a double-digit growth, as I mentioned and showed you in the earlier slide, due to the influx of young professionals who are all eyeing on a thriving job market. Why? Not just the opportunity, but very good pay rate, which is competitive with London's pay rate. And obviously, from the investment point of view, the entry price for house or apartment is still much relatively affordable than London levels. And they are going at almost about 50-60% lesser than London new home value. And that makes it even more appealing. So according to economists, Manchester is leading the 5-year rental growth forecast in the UK. We projected growth of 21.6% increase over the next 5 years. And on top of this, according to the City 5-year sales forecast, the value of a property purchased today would appreciate by 19.3% by 2027. And all this making Manchester one of the strongest investment cases that we head into 2024. So, do we miss out something? Yes, the mortgage, the money. So if you're after a mortgage and is concerned about the higher interest rate now, you can look at the projects with a further completion date, which hopefully by then the inflation or the interest rate are all well arrested. And definitely the interest rate will fall back to the optimum level. If you do not need to have a mortgage, you can enter the market now and benefit from the high rental rates. So with interest rate, though they are being on pause for now, but it also has blocked quite a fair bit of segments of investors or first-time buyers from entering to the market. So there is a window and of opportunity now for astute buyers like yourself to enter the market before the market recovers and the prices takes off again. So with that, I thank you for your time. I hope I've been able to allay some of the concerns. I will now turn the floor over to Sam, our money guy, who will share the current and future landscape of the financial markets in the UK. Over to you, Sam.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Shelvin. And good evening, everyone. Hi, nice to see you. My name is Sam Lee. I am the Asia Pacific Director for Capricorn Financial. So we are a UK mortgage broker, and I am based in our Singapore office. So I'm going to talk to you briefly today about the current mortgage market dynamics, to give you an overview of what rates are doing, where they're going, as well as the process involved in getting a UK mortgage and some typical terms. So without further ado, just to further introduce my company. So we are the largest independent mortgage brokerage in London, which is where we're headquartered, and we've been around since 2005. We've got over 80 advisors working for us, most of whom are based in London, but we have our office here in Singapore. We also have a team in Hong Kong, Shanghai, and Dubai. We are specialists when it comes to new builds, so we work very closely with many UK property developers, as well as agents such as RBC that do sell predominantly new build properties. We're a whole of market mortgage brokerage, regulated by the UK FCA, and authorized, which means we have access to all the different lenders in the market, as well as some exclusive products that we've managed to negotiate with some of the lenders as well. And we don't charge any upfront fees at all for our service, so it's completely free of charge or obligation just to have a chat with us to better understand your mortgage options. And we've got a 5-star Google review as well, with well over 1,000 reviews. So our clients are clearly happy with what we do. We do put customer service at the forefront of what we do. We have a few specialist teams within the company. There is the international team headed up by myself that specialize in dealing with non-UK residents. We also have a commercial team that will deal with more specialist buy-to-let properties, commercial properties, of course, bridging loans, development finance, any sort of weird and wonderful lending. These guys can assist. And we have a Capricorn private clients team who will help out with high net worth individuals or lending above £3 million. This next slide, let's go back a second, shows you our product wheel. So these are just some of the lenders that we're working with. As you can see, there's many lenders on there. And in fact, there's quite a few outside of this that we work with. You just can't fit them all onto one screen. The typical lenders we work with for clients based out in Malaysia or Singapore would be the likes of HSBC, or Bank of China, or some local banks like UOB, Maybank. But there's also a number of lesser known lenders who you wouldn't think to approach. Banks like Keystone or Lendco, Skipton International. These are not household names, banks that you wouldn't think of approaching from the start, but we know exactly what their products are, what their criteria is, and who's offering the best rates at any given time. So our job is to find the best lender for you, but it's also to manage the mortgage application process from start to finish. So we deal with the banks on your behalf to ensure that you get the approval and you get the mortgage in time for when you need it. So to give you a bit of a market summary, so as everyone knows, rates have been increasing over the last couple of years. Right now, the Bank of England, which is the central bank in the UK, has set their base rate at 5.25%. And the graph you can see on your screen is the historic trend of the base rate dating back to 1975. So you can see where it is now is actually not too high when you look at a historical comparison. But of course, times have changed quite a bit over the last 50 years. What we did see, though, between sort of 2008, when we had the global financial crisis, and just a couple of years ago, rates were ultra low, almost zero. And people naturally got used to that. But with inflation increasing and coming out of COVID, war in Ukraine, and so on, clearly there's been successive base rate rises. But that seems to now have tempered off. The base rate has been kept at a consistent level for the past few months. And the latest forecast would suggest that by the middle of this year, it is likely we will see a base rate reduction. The markets are already ahead of that. Swap rates have been coming down, and the fixed rates that we're able to get from many UK banks have also decreased over the last 6 months or so. So the rates we're quoting today are actually cheaper than what we were quoting this time last year. And we expect that trend to continue throughout the year as well. Plus, previously, if you wanted to go for a tracker rate rather than a fixed rate, you would expect a rate of around 3% above base rate or plus cost of funds. And when the base rate was virtually zero, your all-in rate was also close to 3. But of course, as the base rate and cost of funds have increased, we've seen lenders really squeeze their margins right down to 1 to 2%. So that's helped to make the floating rates more attractive. And they'll seem even more attractive as the rates continue to go down. So if you'd rather not lock in your interest rate now, we can go for a floating rate so you can take advantage of any downward trend in the interest rates. One thing we've noted over the last few years is certainly an increased anti-money laundering requirements. So what that means is when you buy a property in the UK, both the solicitor and the bank do need to check your source of funds. So just be prepared to provide bank statements to evidence how you built up your funds and answer questions around that as well. But that's something that we would assist with as part of the mortgage application. We'll ensure that basically any questions that we think the bank might ask you, are answered up front so that it goes through as seamlessly as possible. But the current appetite to lend from the banks is very strong. Banks are coming up with new innovative ways to try and increase demand. For example, lowering interest rates at the front end, but you're adding on fees at the back end, to make it more competitive from a cash flow position. And banks are constantly reaching out to us to try and win new business. So we can see that banks definitely want to get money out the door. So there's nothing changed there at all, which is great news. We've got a couple of charts here, courtesy of Deloitte, which shows you the inflation rates in the UK, US, and the Eurozone versus the central bank rates in those areas as well. So what you notice is quite a clear and obvious trend. This is since 2014, whereby as sort of inflation has gone up, we've seen in turn the kind of central bank rates increase, and that's no change from what we've seen over the last couple of years. But of course, what we have seen over the last year is inflation come down, and that's continue to do so. And your forecast suggests that we should get below the 2% inflation target in the UK by middle of this year. And once we get below that target, we will see the base rate come down, if not sooner. So there clearly is a bit of a lag there because the base rate still has hold steady for the past few months, but we do expect that to follow, and rates are likely to come down. So we've got these forecasts from Deloitte. As I pointed out earlier, the current base rate in the UK is 5.25%. If you look back over the last couple of decades, between 2000 and 2010, the average rate was 4.3%. But the decade after that, the average rate was 0.5%. This is the central bank rates. So the general market expectations is that by the end of this year, the base rate will be down to 4.1% on average. And over the next 5 years, the markets expect it to be 3.6% on average. Some of the CFOs from the biggest organizations in the UK are slightly more optimistic than that, and they think over the next 5 years we'll see an average base rate of 3.5%. So clearly the trend is downward, which is a positive thing to see. So what is the typical sort of criteria and lending policy to get a mortgage in the UK? Well, first of all, some banks will have income requirements. So they might have a minimum income requirement in order to qualify for a loan in the first place. That income threshold could be as low as £25,000, but it could be £50,000 or even £100,000, depending on the bank. And each lender does have their own individual criteria. We do even have banks that have no income requirements at all, so they can base the loan purely on the rental income. Let's say if you're retired or in between jobs. With those lenders, the maximum loan will probably be at a lower level, perhaps only around 60, 65%. But if you are able to evidence income, we can get up to 75% loan to value on a purchase and on a remortgage as well. Lenders do have rental income stress tests, so they do typically want to see that the rent covers your mortgage interest payments, and they're purely looking at the interest portion of the loan, not the principal part. And sometimes they want to see 125% coverage of that. But again, each lender has their own way of stress testing it, and we can help to navigate that, of course. We can get lending anywhere in the UK. I know that some banks here in Singapore and also in Malaysia may only lend in London, for example, whereas the banks in the UK that we're working with have no restrictions, typically provided it's in England, Wales, or Scotland. And if you're buying for your own personal use rather than investment, that's something we can also assist with. That's known as a residential mortgage. Of course, because there's no rental income coming in, it's going to be based purely on your income and affordability. So the finances do need to be strong in order to qualify. And if you think that you want to buy in the name of your children, for example, perhaps they're the ones that are living in the UK and occupying the property. So therefore, it might be more beneficial to put it in their name for legacy planning, for stamp duty, and so on. Then we can assist you to get a mortgage, even if you're buying in your children's name. That's known as a guarantor mortgage. Not all banks are offering that, so it is a bit more specialist, but that's something that we do assist with and help plenty of buyers go down that structure in the past. If you already own properties and you want to look at refinancing to take advantage of some reduced rates, perhaps you want to switch from repayment to interest only, or you want to release some equity because the value of the property has increased and you want to reinvest that capital in another property or elsewhere, we can assist with that. So we can get up to 75% of the current property value. And if you're buying through a company, that's also something we can help with in order to get a mortgage. Not all banks do lend to companies, but more banks tend to be opening up their doors these days because there is a rising trend of it. It would typically need to be a UK registered company, although we can get lending for other structures. But yeah, sometimes you can find that the process might be a little bit more lengthy, both on the mortgage side and the legal side. And the loan to values are not always as strong. But if you are looking to buy through a company, happy to look at options. But of course, it's worth also to seek professional tax advice, which is obviously something that Richard can assist with, and he'll talk more about that later on. And what are the typical rates and fees available, as well as the costs? Well, there are buy-to-let interest rates for foreign nationals buying in the UK as low as 4.5%. Or if you're an expat, we can get slightly lower than that still. The average rate that we're seeing, because it does depend on the type of product that you go for and the associated fees, average rate we're seeing is closer to 6%, I would say. What other fees would be involved? Well, there would be a lender arrangement fee. So that's normally either a flat fee of around £2,000, or sometimes it's a percentage of the loan amount, perhaps 1% or even 2% of the loan. You may also be expected to pay for the valuation fee on the property, as well as legal fees as well. And we do charge a brokerage fee for our service. It's a flat fee of £1,500. That is only payable upon successful approval of the loan only, though. And if you're a return customer, it's a reduced fee of just £750. The maximum age, if it's an investment purchase, we can get lending up to 85 years old and beyond. Surprisingly, some may say, we can get lending well into retirement. Reason being is that lenders will just take into account the rental income of the property. So whether you're working or not, you should still be receiving the rental income, which will help to service the loan. The maximum loan tenure would be between 25 to 35 years, depending on the lender. But if you are concerned about having to pay the mortgage off over a shorter term, because perhaps you're already 60 years of age plus, well, we can get interest-only loans, regardless of your age. And what that means is rather than paying the principal and interest, you just service the interest each month on the mortgage. So you're not actually paying down the loan at all. The benefit of that is just it keeps the monthly outgoings to a minimum so that your rent will comfortably cover your mortgage payments as well as the other costs. And you should also be taking a good profit home each month as well. But whether you go interest only or repayment, you are able to make capital overpayments on your loan to bring down the loan on an ad hoc basis. So the process to apply for the loan would be as follows. The first thing we would look to do, it would be myself or one of my colleagues would have an initial consultation with you. This could even be done in person. We do travel to Malaysia quite frequently. My colleague Brandon is there this weekend, so you can certainly arrange an appointment with him. I also travel out every other month. Otherwise, we can have a chat via Zoom, Team, or over the phones. After an initial conversation with us, we'll be able to make some recommendations, give you a breakdown of the available products. We can then look to have you approved in principle with one of the lenders within just a day or two. And once you're ready to submit your full mortgage application, so this is when the property you're buying is set to complete within the next 6 months, because mortgage offers are valid for up to 6 months. We would submit the mortgage application, which requires a number of documentation to evidence your income, your assets, your liabilities, your ID, and so on. The bank would need to do a survey on the property to establish the value of the capital as well as the rental, because this all feeds into their loan to values and their stress tests. And within a period of about 6 to 8 weeks on average, we'll have the mortgage offer, which will be valid for up to 6 months, as I mentioned. And then the solicitors will be provided with instructions by the bank in order to make sure that their legal requirements are satisfied. So it's best to allow a further 2 to 3 weeks before you can draw down those funds. But we will manage this whole process for you. So we're dealing with the banks on your behalf. We're following up with solicitors, surveyors, developers, every party involved to ensure that everything kind of stays together and people know what's going on. So yeah, that's it from my side, and got my contact details here, and I believe we'll have a Q&A session at the end. But yeah, back to Shelvin for the time being.
Thank you, Sam. Next, we will be welcoming Richard to take the baton and to get us into the tax regime in the UK. Over to you, Richard.
Yep. Hello, Shelvin. Thank you very much. And thank you, Sam, as well, for your talk. A very positive outlook there on the mortgages. So what I'm going to talk to you today is about the UK tax side of things for investing properties. So in particular, if you're a first-time buyer, or even if you're not, you may not be fully familiar with the UK tax system. So I'll just chat you through some of the basics, some of the things you need to be aware of, and of course, let you know exactly how we, my company, Adams & Moore, can help you. So, just to go back a slide. Right. So, what I will talk to you today will be firstly a little introduction about who we are as a company, and then I'll go into about understanding the UK tax system. In particular, what happens when you buy, rent, and sell. Of course, the most common things you would want to know about. And I'll also have a little chat just about building a tax efficient portfolio. Now, it will be quite brief given the time we have, but just to give you a couple of indications of things you can do. So I've just picked out 2 things here. One being to use a company, which is something that Sam did mention before, and sort of the differences and potential advantages you can get with that. And also maximizing your personal allowances. So this is something which you'll see as we go on, it can actually be very good in terms of getting a tax efficient property portfolio. And then we'll just end with a little bit of how we as a firm can help you. So, Adams & Moore, now we are qualified and regulated UK accountants. I myself am personally qualified, have been for many years. We are a very traditional accounting firm. We do all things, we have a lot of UK-based clients where we do the usual company accounts, VAT returns, etc. But where we sort of differ is we do actually have a non-resident landlord team who are based in Kuala Lumpur, so very close to you guys, and they just look after all of our non-UK residents. So we act for about 2,000 non-UK residents, people just like you who are based mainly in Asia, who invest in UK property, to rent it out. So a majority of our clients will come from the likes of Malaysia, Singapore, China, Hong Kong, and Thailand, but some are beyond there, such as the Middle East and things like that as well. So we regularly travel to Asia as well as from the UK. In fact, I'm catching a flight tomorrow to come out to see you guys in Kuala Lumpur for the weekend. So, and I tend to fly out every sort of couple of months to support the team out there. So the point being here, we're just, we're more than capable to look after you guys from any aspect you need from UK tax, from when you invest in your property. So, going on to the UK tax side of things, anyone who's bought a property in the UK before will, of course, be familiar with the stamp duty rules. But basically, it's unavoidable, unfortunately. When you do buy a UK property, you will have to pay stamp duty. How much you pay will depend on the purchase price. So it does work in bands. So the first £250,000, you will pay stamp duty either 2% or 5%. Then from 250 to 925, you pay at 7 or 10%, and so on and so on. But it's like, the reason there's two rates there is because of the two surcharges. So there is a 2% surcharge that applies if you're a non-UK resident. So anyone who's completing, obviously if you're resident in Malaysia, you will have to pay the 2% surcharge. So the minimum rates you will pay will be 2% up to £250,000. There is another surcharge, a 3% surcharge that applies when you buy a second home. So if on the day you complete your UK investment, if you own another property anywhere in the world, doesn't matter if it's UK or not, anywhere in the world, you would also pay the 3% surcharge. So, and that of course will apply to the vast majority of you. So you will pay the rates to the right-hand side there. So the 5%, the 10%, the 15% and the 17% if over 1.5 million. It's possible, of course, that if you do buy and you don't actually own anywhere else at the time you buy, maybe you rent in Malaysia or whatever, then actually you can pay the lower rates of 2%, 7% and 12%. So it's possible to structure your portfolio like that. For example, put it in a child, a child's name who's over 18, who can then actually take advantage of the lower stamp duties. It's something we can talk to you about if need be. And just remember, whilst you do have to pay the stamp duty, it's all claimable when you sell. So whatever you pay in stamp duty, it reduces your gain, so you will pay less capital gains tax when you do sell. But just a little reminder there, stamp duty is not all bad. There is a little advantage to paying for it as well. So, how does the UK tax system work? Okay, so the UK tax year, it runs from the 6th of April to the 5th of April every year. Okay, please don't ask me why, it just does. Okay, I can't answer that question. So you then have until the following 31st of January to submit your tax return. So anyone who had rental income up until the 5th of April 2023, well, your tax return is due by the 31st of January 2024, i.e. in a couple of weeks' time. That's what I'm doing at the moment. I've taken a break from my tax returns for this webinar. When it's finished, I'll be going back to doing them again. So we have about 2 weeks left. So obviously, if that is one of you, then just please let me know if you need help doing a tax return by the 31st of January. If, of course, you have rental income since April, so you received it, this current tax year, you will have to the 31st of January 2025 to do your tax return. Late filing penalties do apply if you're late, so of course, do make sure you're not late. By all means, appoint us, we'll make sure you get it done on time. So, how is tax calculated? Well, because you are non-UK resident, you will only pay tax on your UK income. We don't care what you earn in Malaysia or anywhere else. So, and now for the vast majority, of course, your only UK income will be your rental income. Now, your rental income is great, but it's always based on your profits. So you have your rental income, but it's always expenses you can claim. We know exactly the sort of things you can claim. It'll be things directly linked to your rental income itself. So things like the letting agent fees, your service charges, your accountancy fees, things like that. I say watch out for mortgage interest because the rules have changed. They have done a few years ago regarding mortgage interest, but fear not, having mortgage interest, having a mortgage, paying mortgage interest will still save you tax. And in fact, for the vast majority of non-UK residents, you will actually still save exactly the same amount of tax under the new rules as you would under the old rules. It's a bit of a myth when people think under these new rules you will pay more tax. For the vast majority of non-UK residents, you will still pay exactly the same amount of tax. And the mortgage interest, very importantly, does save you all that tax. Now, the good news, in fact, the best news of this webinar is that the Malaysian nationals and residents do qualify for the tax-free allowance. So it's currently £12,570 per person. That means each of you can have £12,570 of rental profits in the UK and not pay a penny of tax. And because it's per person, of course, as I will touch on later, if there's two of you, if you're joint owners, husband, wife, brother, sister, whatever, So that doubles, and effectively you can have over £25,000 of rental profits without paying UK tax. Fantastic. And perhaps even better news for you guys, if the Singaporeans don't qualify. So whereas you get that tax-free allowance, the Singaporeans don't. So some good news there. Now, if you do go over your £12,500 of rental profits, or double if you were two of you, the tax rate does start at 20%. Okay, that will apply for the first £37,700 of your taxable income, again per person, and then you have a higher rate of 40%. So certainly from our point of view, for our Malaysian clients, the vast majority actually won't pay any UK tax at all because it's covered by the allowances, and those that do pay will pay tax at 20%. To actually be Malaysian and to pay tax at beyond 40%, you will have to have rental profits in excess of £50,000 per person, which of course can happen if you have multiple properties. And if that is the case, that's when you'd be looking at perhaps using a company. But for the majority of people, they're within that limit, so they either pay no tax at all or pay tax at 20%, which actually, it's fairly efficient here. It's not, it's not the lowest tax rate in the world, but it certainly isn't the highest. We think it's more than fair at 20% tax rate for profits up to £50,000. So, in particular, those people who are buying and renting for the first time, just really to remind you that you do need to register with HMRC. You will need to do a tax return to declare your rental income and to pay your taxes. But before you can do that, you've got to register as well. So it's one of the many services we can do for you. Everything I talk about today, it's a service that we can do for you. So you would register to open up your tax file, register as an overseas landlord, something called the NRL scheme, which some of you may be familiar with. And once that's all done, then you're ready to go and you can do your tax returns every year. Okay? So that covers what happens when you rent. And now we're just going to go on to a little bit about what happens when you sell. So you buy your investment, maybe you rent it out for a few years, and then you want to cash in and sell. So under the current UK rules, when a non-UK resident sells UK property, they have to report that sale within 60 days. It doesn't matter whether you make a profit or make a loss or whatever, you just have to declare that within 60 days. Okay. And again, whether you pay tax or not does depend on your gain. It's always based on your gain. So you had your sale price, you less your purchase costs, and then you less all your allowable expenses, which of course, we know exactly what you can claim. And these allowable expenses, they will be different to the expenses you claim against your rental income. Okay, these will be things directly linked to your sale and purchase, for things like your selling agent fees, the stamp duty you pay on purchase, as I mentioned before, your legal fees on the sale and purchase, cost of your furniture pack, and even the mortgage broker fees as well. So all these fees are tax deductible for when you sell. Just make a note of them as and when you pay them, and you can claim them when you sell. You do get an annual allowance as well for all you non-UK residents get it. Unfortunately, it is coming down a lot. It was over £12,000 not that long ago. It's now £6,000, and it's set to reduce to £3,000 per person from April. But at least it's better than nothing, and it's possible that increases again over time as well. But at the moment, it's something you get tax-free. And when you do pay capital gains tax, the rate starts at 18%, and it's roughly for the first sort of £50,000 or so worth of profit. And above that, it goes to 28%. At the moment, there's no higher rate than 28% on your profit, your tax that you will pay on your profit. Okay, so that happens when you sell. So let's have a look about individual versus company. So on the left-hand side, this is where I've already talked about, all about your allowances, your tax rates, the fact that you use mortgage interest. The mortgage interest basically is replaced by a tax credit individually, but you still save the same amount of tax if your profits are up to £50,000. So understand we can from that. But just on the right-hand side for the company, one of the main differences for the company, which actually is a disadvantage, is you don't get any allowances. So this £12,500 allowance you qualify for your income tax for your rental income. If you were to rent for your company, you wouldn't get that allowance. If a rental profit, if a rental income profit is £10,000 in a company, you are paying tax on that £10,000. The tax rate for companies do start at 19%, so it's slightly lower, 1% lower, up to £20,000. But if your written profits are only below £50,000, using a company to save that 1% tax probably really isn't worth it because you're preparing your allowance. I mean, the mortgage interests are free deductible in the company. So, but obviously, as I said, it doesn't really make too much difference anyway. You're still paid, save the same amount of tax if you're individually anyway, if the profit's £5,000. Where things might be advantageous could be more for the capital gains tax. Again, you get no allowances, but actually they're not much anyway. They're set to £43,000, so it's not huge amounts. But it does mean that the maximum rate that you can pay capital gains tax is at 25%, whereas the maximum rate individually is 28%. So there is a sort of minimum 3% saving you can make, and when if the gain is quite significant, 6 figures, then obviously that can add up. And also, by owning a property through a company, there is another option that you can do, which you can't do individually, and that is if you want to sell the property, is to actually sell the shares in the company instead. So rather than a company selling the property and a company making the property, you just sell your shares in the company to a new buyer who will take over your company. And actually, with that, you do pay based on current rules, a share sale is actually has a lower tax rate. So the current tax rates now are 10% and 20%. So potentially there is up to an 8% tax saving there where you do sell the shares in a company instead. And if you're talking about a 6-figure gain, then that potentially is something worthwhile. So it's something we can talk to you about in terms of if it's something worthwhile for you. My general philosophy is by default I would buy individually, but I would use a company for a reason. And obviously, one of the main reasons would be to prevent yourself paying that 40% tax for your rental income and present yourself paying a lot of your profits at 20% of those tax. If using a company can prevent that, then that is definitely a reason to use a company. Okay. For stamp duty, a company is exactly the same, so long as you buy to let. So one of the restrictions of using a company is if you do buy through a company, you must rent that property out. If you're actually buying with the intention of keeping it for yourself, living there every year again, then I would rule out the internet. And the reason I say that as well is also the bottom line and your tax limbo dwellings. There's something where if your property is worth £500,000 and you bought through a company and you don't rent it out, you actually have to pay annual tax. That won't apply if you're buying individually. So a couple of things to look out for there with the company. But on the whole, companies do have their place and can be useful in the right circumstances. More than happy to chat with you on a this basis if the company could be good for you. So, but where people might, gain more advantage as well is actually just maximising your personal allowances. So you can actually have up to 4 owners in a UK property, obviously age 18 or over. It's quite common to have 2 owners. Vast majority of our clients have 2 owners. I say husband and wife. It doesn't have to be husband and wife. It can be 2 friends, 2 colleagues, 2 partners who are not married, brother and sister, whatever. It doesn't matter. So, and obviously with the allowances, this is the main advantage because you can maximise your allowances. So you can actually have rental profits of over £25,000 just with 2 owners without paying tax, and actually up to £100,000. Once you factor in, although you pay tax at up to 20%, once you factor in your first £25,000 as tax at 3%, when you then pay 3% tax on your next £75,000, it's an effective overall rate of 15%. So actually, you can actually pay tax at effectively at 15% by just having 2 owners on the property. And then similarly with the capital gains tax, because the highest, that lowest rate of 18%. You really apply for up to £100,000 by having 2 owners. So actually, if you can actually get away with just paying tax at 15% and just paying tax at 18%, you might think, well, what really is the use of the company? Perhaps I'm better off just using my allowances, or at least maximising my allowances for my existing properties. And once those allowances are maximised, if you then buy another property, then consider using the property. Once you're allowed to take actions. That's something that I do talk to people quite a bit as well. Now, there is a bit about inheritance tax. I haven't talked about that today, it's time constraints, but the allowance for inheritance tax, and I haven't talked about it to anyone who is concerned, but the tax-free allowance is £325,000, and it again is per person. So joint owners can effectively have £650,000 of tax-free allowances for inheritance. And of course, all these figures are based on just 2 owners. If there were 4 owners, which you can do, everything gets doubled. You can actually have, you know, £1.3 million of tax-free for inheritance tax, and up to £200,000 for rental income tax effectively at 15%. So it's definitely worth considering multiple owners and maximise your allowances as an alternative to using a company. Okay, so hopefully that's a little bit of guidance there for you on what to do and how to maximise your tax efficiency. Just a very little example here to say with the rental income, say for example, you're getting £1,800 a month as a rental income, you use your, you've got allowable expenses, say they're £5,000, your rental profits were then £16,600. With 2 owners, that would actually be no tax at all, okay? If there was 1 owner and there was no mortgage, you would pay £806 tax, okay? So just gives you an example of how you can actually just simply by having 2 owners can save you some tax as opposed to having 1 owner. So if there are 2 of you and you have the possibility of hiring them over your names, then actually it's probably worth doing just for the tax. Okay, now just to finish off with how we can help you. So everything I've talked about today, so everything's, you know, it starts off with just the compliance-based stuff. So we have your registration with HMRC, your renting accounts, your tax returns, the company accounts if you buy through a company, the capital gains tax returns if you do sell a property, all that stuff we can do. But because we are qualified UK accountants, we can go beyond that as well. So we can give you full tax advice on anything you want. So whether it's purchase structures, like using a company, things like that, exit strategies, inheritance tax reviews, whatever it is, you know, we can ask, we can advise, whatever it is, we're not probably before, we're more than qualified to do that. Something like a service purchase agent as well, occasionally your mortgage lender requires that, we can do that, and also handle the HMRC things. So when you pay our fees, we can then forward that on to HMRC, you can pay as a tax, you can forward that to HMRC, save you on to pay 2 companies. Okay, so that's everything for me. Thank you very much for your time. If anyone's there at the event on Saturday, I will see you. Otherwise, please get in touch with us. Our details are on the screen there. So we have a general NRI on more email address, plus Rashid Yusuf, who manages the office in Parliament. So by all means, send them an email with any questions, and then they'll be more than happy. Okay, so thank you very much, and now I'll hand you back down to Sheldon.
Thank you, Richard. Now that we know there will be a special rate for joint owners, there's a very strong reason for you to look for subsequent purchase of property. And we do have really good products in Manchester. I'm just going to go through a brief introductions of what we have on hand. So Waterhouse Garden is our latest scheme in Manchester City. We have a very prestigious address, M3. So this new development offers an outstanding connectivity with several city hotspots such as the Arndale, Primworks, which are all under 10 minutes walk away. And the nearest metro link is 7 minutes away, and both of the city university are just a very short cycle from the project. So just take a look at the information here. The AO Arena is just literally just next door, right here. And then we have a city campus, Manchester College, literally adjacent to the site. So that's the project. And we are all within Norma, which is the up and coming regeneration area with lots of really good office, business center, some retails. It feels like a public garden in KL as well. So that sort of vibe and also dynamics. Education, yeah, like I mentioned, the college is literally just next door. So it's definitely not 5 minutes walk. It's probably around 3 minutes walk, I would say. Then we have got University of Manchester, about 10 minutes cycle. My colleague actually did the cycle herself. It's proven. And then we got a University of Salford, also within 10 minutes cycle away. So Waterhouse Garden is actually a long-awaited regeneration scheme, and it sits on the former brewery sites of Dutton Street in Manchester, and it's actually a mixed-use scheme. So this exciting new landmark development is located, like I say, in a highly desired M3 postcode. It connects to popular Norma and Greengate neighborhood of the city. And just to give you a bit of history, the place used to be the old Boddington Brewery site, which was a historic landmark in the city, and is now fully being used as a residential and commercial space. So this historic site, it was said to be a luxurious home address for the first time. You will see a community of high specs apartments, duplexes, penthouses, and they're all coupled with exclusive clubhouse facility, which offers high-end amenities such as the gym, the swimming pool, the lounge, which I will show some CGIs later on in the later slides. There will also be modern office spaces with all of this will be helping to create an energetic contemporary neighborhood in the ever-growing city of Manchester. We also love the fact that there is going to be a 30,000 square feet of commercial space right here, and that will be the home to independent restaurants and bars. And they're all gorgeously landscaped public space around the area, and there will be, like I mentioned, modern office spaces. So what you're seeing here is actually a benchmark in making. So this is all about building its own community. And Cellboy, the developer, they specifically and painstakingly designed a new local neighborhood that would suit everyone, the rentals or the owners alike, who is seeking a vibrant, convenient, and city-central lifestyle. So these are the CGI of the facilities. You get access to swimming pools, sports courts, lounge, games room, private dining areas, a cinema, and as well as meeting rooms and workspaces. Summary, like mentioned, central locations is within the Norma and Greengate neighborhood. If you know London, I'm sure some of you know London fairly well. Would Fairdays to Shoreditch in London equivalent. There will be 556 high-spec residential across 5 blocks. So in terms of density-wise, it's actually quite average. I wouldn't say it's high density. It's a medium density development, and it would take roughly around 5 years development period to complete. So I think in terms of site completion, it should be finished by 2027. But the first block is the one that we are releasing right now, and that will be completed in Q2 2026. And definitely the selling point is where the Victoria Station, the Manchester Victoria Station, is just down the road. We walked there ourselves. The team went to the site in June last year. We took a lot of pictures and videos. We timed our walking distance to the station, and it took roughly about 7 minutes, and that is correct. What was being mentioned in the brochure, 7 minutes, that is called precision, correct. Then obviously the university as well. They're all within 10-minute cycle distance. So before I get into the last page, we are actually launching the project this weekend, Saturday in Four Seasons, and we do have a luncheon event. We have full house, so all seats are taken, but if you're interested to look at the project, we do have all the marketing materials in the room. So you can reach out to us if you even want to have a separate conversation through call or the physical meeting. Reach out to me. I have my contact details on the left side, then Sam's contact in the middle, and Richard on the right side. So maybe some of you find the sales event a little bit intimidating. So please feel free to reach out to us. We will come to you. And I do feel that the personalized consultation works better in that sense. So that sort of ends our session today, and I hope you find our sharing useful and inspiring. We hope to hear back from you soon. So enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you, Richard and Sam, for joining us today. And I look forward to seeing you, Richard, in KL, and Sam maybe soon.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Yeah.
Take
Thank
care.
you, guys. Thank you for listening.
Bye-bye.